West Coast to Boston, where he overcame defending champion Olavi Suomalainen from Finland for the Patriots' Day victory in 2 hours, 16 minutes, and 3 seconds. Later that year, he finished 4th in the Fukuoka Marathon, which at the time was considered the World Championships. He went on to become publisher of Random Lengths publications, which focused on the wood products industry, from which he retired in 2018. He's currently president of the Eugene Civic Alliance, a nonprofit that was established to build and operate a community sports and recreation venue in his hometown, helping ensure that young people for generations to come will be able to follow in his footsteps. John Anderson. John, can you believe it's been 50 years since you won here?
Yes, in many ways. But also, just coming back to Boston, it's like I was last year yesterday, and really it's been 7 or 8 years since I was even in Boston. And for the marathon, it was the 100th, which was 1996. So it's changed, but it hasn't changed that much to me. Of course, the event has gotten huge.
And we'll talk a little as we go on about some of the differences from 50 years ago till today. Tell us a little bit about that 96 return when you came back here for the 100.
Well, the BAA did a wonderful job at the time, but again, I'll say that the event wasn't as big as it is now. It's grown considerably in that time from 96. The one thing that is etched in my old brain is the gathering at the Copley Plaza Hotel, where we were invited, including all past champions were invited into the big ballroom there. No media, nobody else. And that was a special time.
What a room full, huh?
Yeah, it was really something.
Great. Going back to 1973, John, talk us through a little bit of the race. What you remember of it, what you remember when you took the lead, what you felt about crossing the finish line.
I've recounted it many times, so I could probably fill a half an hour, but I'll try my best not to. First of all, it was a warm day. It was 77 degrees. I caught the bus out at Copley Plaza and connected with a man that might have broken 3 hours, but I knew him from the San Francisco Bay Area where I lived at the time. Got out to Hopkinton, and I bumped into my teammate Jeff Galloway from the 72 Olympics. He had run the year prior and had gone to Wesleyan, so he knew the ropes. And I followed Jeff. It was a warm day. We stayed in an apartment, didn't have to really warm up, not far from the start line. I can remember Andy Burfoot was in the room. I saw him just a little while ago, and we recollected. With Jeff's and Andy's guidance, I went to the start line. I had not done it before. And I knew Jeff Galloway was a really good pacer in terms of 10,000 marathon, 5,000 anything. And he'd run it before, knew the course, and so I ran with Jeff for at least 10 miles, if not almost half the marathon. And then I was having a better day than Jeff and left him. I passed, I think, more than just the Tom Fleming and Olavi Suomalainen, but I do remember passing Suomalainen right near the peak of Heartbreak Hill, and then ran as hard as I could. The downhill being the toughest part of that race, as I recall, actually, after running basically 20 miles. So at the finish, first of all, we started at noon, not in the morning, so it was quite warm. And I was told afterward, because there were people everywhere, that the Red Sox game had just ended. And so there was, another 45,000 people on the streets around the finish line. So it was really something.
That's great. Jackie, tell us a little bit about your race in 73.
Oh my goodness. Completely opposite of John. Absolutely. I knew nothing. I knew no one. I was a miler. You know, I had just won my first marathon, my first try, a few months before, and a friend who was a teammate of mine was going to Yale to college, and he said, you know, they just let women run this race for the first time. You should go. And I probably said something stupid like, what's in Boston? And so I came in knowing no one, had no experience. It was my second road race, because the first marathon that I ran on a lark was my first. So he was an Olympian, you know, I was nobody. I had no experience. I didn't know, you knew all those elite athletes. I knew no one. And I honestly don't have a whole lot of memories about who did I pass when. I didn't know Nina, but apparently I passed her somewhere around Heartbreak, I don't know. But I think I got very lucky because I had a coach who didn't give me long runs to prepare necessarily, but monumental amounts of interval training on the track. So my workouts on the track could be 3 hours long any given night. But it was all speed work all the time. But I think that helped me with endurance. And then, of course, between the first marathon and the second marathon, I knew enough to follow the guys in my club who were marathoners and go run long runs on the weekend. So there was that. But also, coming from California, I got lucky with the weather. You know, I really didn't think it was a heat wave. And I got lucky with the hills because I really didn't think it was hilly compared to what we have. I was a cross-country runner, and unlike the East Coast or the rest of the world, we don't run flat courses with cold weather and rain and mud. We run hot, dry, hilly courses. So I was a hill runner. I've always been kind of I love to run in the mountains, you know, I love to run trails. So I think I got lucky on those two scores. Those didn't bother me. The wardrobe, that's something else again. I've told that story ad nauseum.
I think you need to tell it one more time.
Okay, so I have my club would, well, in the moment we were between clubs, so I didn't honestly have a club uniform, but I was running for the San Fernando Valley Track Club in a green uniform. Who knew that? I heard it was Patriots Day. We don't have Patriots Day in California. So I thought, okay, I better dress patriotic. So I dug in my closet. This is cardinal sin number 1. Never do anything new. Never change anything on race day. But no, you know, I go in my closet and I found some blue and white terry cloth checkered shorts. I thought, okay, I'm looking for red, white, and blue. So got the shorts, and then I found a t-shirt, which is on display here. I know, people have been sending me pictures. It had hearts and stripes and stars embroidered all over it, real patriotic. Okay, well the shirt worked just fine. That's why it's here. Gloria Ratty from the BAA bugged me for years to get it. I still have the letter, like, persistence pays off. You gave me your shirt. It has a few extra stars on it because it was my good luck shirt. I didn't want to let it go, and I wore it to death, and every time I got a new hole in it, I embroidered another star.
Gloria Ratty was the BAA archivist for many years. She passed away a few years ago. And if Gloria wanted some memorabilia from you, you eventually gave up and gave it to her.
Oh yeah. So I still have the letter in her beautiful handwriting. Thank you for that. And but the shorts went right in the rag bag because they were a disaster. It was a hot day, so people were hosing us down. Imagine wearing a beach towel around your waist. That's basically what was happening. It was soaking up all the water and pulling down. So I kept bringing them out. And I'm like, and then the water would go down into my socks and shoes. And now remember, I got into running because I was a backpacker, and at my church I was a counselor that took kids on week-long trips in the Sierras. So I was into backpacking, and I treated this long run like a backpacker, except that I broke a few rules. But you wear a thin cotton sock close to your skin to avoid blisters, and then you wear a thick wool sock for cushioning, and then you pick your heaviest, strongest shoes for the long run. Okay, so that was all wrong. So the shoes got thrown away, the shorts went in the rag bag, the socks went in the trash. I finished the race and put my feet in the water. We finished in front of the crew. I think you did the same. And because they were burning up hot, that was the only problem. But the shirt was a lucky shirt. And he was my lucky good omen because we not only won Boston together. Am I stealing your thunder? Okay.
I have no thunder to steal. It's your show.
And then we ran Charleston together next. I won, you were supposed to. But you were my lucky charm. And then we went, then I ran the Nike OTC Marathon in Eugene, Oregon, and we both won, and I set my best world record. So we've had a lot of good times together.
Yeah, so in addition to the difference in wardrobe these days running, the post-race hoopla is a little different. John, can you tell us a little about the aftermath of the race and the next day, going back home, and especially you wanted to call your wife after the race to give her the good news, and just tell us a little bit about that.
I'll start by pointing out that the BAA was, I think, two people at that time, Will Cloney and Jock Semple, and they saved this race over, I think, a pretty lengthy period of time. It was a two-person operation, essentially. After the race, I can remember getting my wreath and trophy. I don't believe it was the mayor. I think he was gone, and it was the chief of police or somebody like that. I found a place to cool off before that in front of the Prue, which I walked by today, and it's gone. The fountain is gone that I jumped into to cool off. I had my beef stew, was interviewed for quite a while. Kind of a bank of reporters in front of me, as I recall. We were sitting up kind of higher like Jacqueline and I are now. And then they all left. And I was by myself. And I got back to the Copley Plaza where my father had said, "That's where you're going to stay, John." He knew Boston way better than I did, and that was very nice, of course. But I hooked up with Tom Fleming and Olavi Suomalainen somehow, and I've forgotten exactly how we connected. They could have been, I think Suomalainen was at the Lenox, because we ended up partying at the Lenox that evening with what I was told was the Finnish community somewhere in the Boston area. And somebody told me that they didn't know about that, even though they're from Boston. But at that time, as I was told, there was a concentration of Finnish immigrants that were in the Boston area. And we had a good time at the Lenox, I guarantee you. Back to the hotel, next morning, got up, got my trophy, had my wreath, my medal, and walked to the subway station and got myself to the airport and on the way home. So that was the way it was back then.
Did anybody comment about you having a trophy on the tee?
Yeah, I recall a few comments on the airplane for sure. Kind of, what's that? And I had to tell them.
Is it true that immediately after the race, when you wanted to call your wife to tell her you?
Yeah, you wanted that story, and it has been written. And Tom Darian and I were talking about this yesterday. Yes, I of course wanted to place a call to my wife, and then I couldn't get a hold of her. But when I tried, and this is the way it was back then, and this is no negative about him because he saved this race. Jock Semple looked at me as I was picking up the phone and said, "John, make it collect." A lot of you may not know what a collect call is anymore, but that's when the call was charged to the receiver, not to the caller. So that's a little tidbit that's kind of fun. I think Jock would get a charge out of that.
I think he would too. And then when you got back home, what was the reception like? Did you go back and wash dishes?
I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I got plenty of attention from the media. I can remember running behind a vehicle with a TV camera and so forth. So there was plenty of media coverage for sure. My father, who worked at the University of Oregon for a very long time in public relations, got letters and so forth from all around the world, and also clippings from newspapers from all around the world. So Boston at that time still had plenty of exposure. may have a lot more now, but it was worldwide back then.
Jackie, what was it like for you when you got back home?
Oh my goodness, my life changed forevermore. I went from being a mediocre miler who never won anything to, winning the most prestigious marathon in the world. And I liken it to, even though I couldn't go to the Olympics, I felt like it was as valuable a win as any Olympic medal. Seriously, if you have a Boston medal, But something you just said, I'm going to tell a news story, that it occurred to me, I lived next door to a woman named Leanne Merriweather. And she was a former, Miss USA, 1955 or something. And then she went on to have a highly successful career as an actress. And I was the babysitter next door for the kids. So Leanne had given me a new sweatsuit to wear to Boston that she loved. She said I only bought one. If you win, you keep it. If you don't win, I keep it. So I got to keep that sweatsuit, but Leanne is the one who got me all the media attention because she was an actress, right? So I started going on shows, talk shows and stuff like that. You won't believe that I was ever shy, but I wouldn't do Hollywood stars and I wouldn't do Johnny Carson. I could not bring myself to do that. I could not. I was just too morbidly embarrassed.
Do you wish now that you would?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I regret that. I couldn't. In fact, one of them, I forget which one. I was on my way to the studio and found a payphone, and I had my own quarter, and called them and said, "I'm sorry, I'm sick. I can't be there." I mean, I was just so morbidly afraid or embarrassed. I couldn't do it anyway, but I could have more media attention. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Great story.
But I decided I wasn't a miler, I was really a marathoner. Although my coach, Laszlo Tabori, he's the third man in the world to break the 4-minute mile after Bannister. He trained me like a miler, and I went back to the track. Some of the guys have told me since that nobody knew how to talk to me anymore. They said, well, what do we say to her when she gets home? And he just like every other night, she's going to get the same workout you got, and she's going to go to the same track meets you're going. And I went right back into track season, right back into cross country. But then I started filtering in the marathons. And the longer I ran, the better I got. So the marathons are what everybody thinks I am. But I did begin my career with a mile title and ended my career with a mile title. So I'm pretty good in my age group, but I was a lousy open miler.
Joan, did winning Boston change your life in any way at the time?
Yeah, I'm just trying to collect my thoughts. It was on my resume for the remaining time of my running competitive career, which I continued until I was just short of age 35. So that was an avenue to get into races during what we know as the running boom, which was pretty much the early 80s by my recollection. And there were marathons all over the place. My company, Nike, was growing like crazy. And it was like every month getting an invitation to go somewhere in the world and race a marathon. And I actually had to turn some down. Life is full of missed opportunities, and that's some of them.
Did you have to turn down Johnny Carson?
I didn't turn down Johnny Carson, and I wouldn't have, by the way.
I'm sorry now.
Anyway, it certainly was on my resume through my competitive career. It remains there, and I get into groups once in a while. I think I mentioned this to you, Barbara. And people start talking about the marathon, and nobody knows about me in that group. And then I am asked, "Did you run it ever, John?" And I said, "How did you do?" And then, of course, jaws drop and so forth. So anyway, that's an interesting experience for uninitiated in terms of people that don't follow running. And there are people that don't follow running right today in Eugene, Oregon. That happens fairly frequently, actually.
Jackie, 1973 was your first year, but you ran again. You ran in '84, and that was, in some ways, even sort of more significant.
Right.
Tell us about that.
My the highest drama story in my life ever. I mean, running or beyond. You know, a lot of women have been fighting to get that marathon in the Olympic Games for many years, and you know, when it began for me after my first world record in '74, I thought we could make it happen by Montreal. Honestly, you know, like, why not? If we just asked them. Well, it turned out to be, it took a lot longer, as some of these, all the women here know. The marathon was successfully added to the program for the '84 games. But the orphaned events, my committee that I worked on, the International Runners Committee, we were still working for the 5 and the 10. And we were actually in an international class action lawsuit for those two events. We were still trying to get them added for LA, for example. But meanwhile, I'm embroiled in that lawsuit, but I'm also trying to qualify for those very first Olympic trials for women. You know, after all the years we spent, I mean, it just was a personal thing that I had to do. I wasn't going to make that team. You know, 36 years old with a 4-year-old child. I wasn't going to make that team. But I wanted to be there. I just wanted to be part of it, no matter what. So I had a lot going on in my life. I'm a mom. I'm working. I don't think I hadn't gone back to grad school yet, but almost. I was just really, really busy. But I was training my little heart out for that marathon. Just one more marathon in me. And I had an injury, a hamstring injury called compartment syndrome that required surgery. Because of the injury, I could not finish any marathon. I would go about 45 minutes and the leg would just go dead, like a tree stump. So we got it diagnosed, got it figured out, had to have surgery November. The women's marathon trials were going to be in May of '84, but you had to qualify by mid-April. So I have this very tight timeline, this very tight window. And out surgery in November, first marathon #1 in January, but it kind of cramped up and I kind of slowed down and started walking and I couldn't work it out and I just missed by a long shot. So then marathon #2 in February, I missed again. I missed by less than a minute or 2 minutes, and it was because I thought my running mate was speeding up, but I was slowing down. And I didn't want to, I just wanted to qualify. I didn't want to put out any more effort than to just qualify. So I missed, I just missed. And so the doctor and the coach, they had a powwow. And they said, ordinarily we wouldn't let anybody run 3 marathons in 3 months in a row, but we understood, but you didn't hurt the scar, you didn't damage anything, you can do this. And we know it means a lot to you. So they gave me one more shot. The last opportunity was Boston '84. That was the last sanctioned race that you could run a qualifying time on, so I had no choice. But guess what else happened on that very same day? My lawsuit went to court for the first time. And so I had to make a choice. But I figured, my committee is 13 people. My lawyers are the ACLU lawyers. I'm not really needed there. So the most important thing I could do was to go to Boston to run my last attempt at a qualifier. I get here and I'm looking out the window, hail, rain, cold, and my roommate was from Florida. We both had tans because we'd been training in warm and sun. And I think I was on the verge of crying, but she pointed out to me that we didn't come all this way for nothing. We have nothing to lose but to try. The only losing is not trying. And she was right. And we went to the starting line. And I remember there were a lot of women who were still trying to get their qualifying kind of bonded together and were sharing clothes because it was so darn cold. I mean, I had tights on, I had long sleeves, I had just trying to stay warm. Well, I'm bopping along, I'm doing okay. I got out okay, I didn't crash, didn't fall. I'm on pace, 5K, 10K. I'm actually kind of excited that in the old days, remember you got your splits when you entered a new town, and they were meaningless. But at least now they were getting 5K splits and 10K splits, which I could make sense of. So I knew I was on pace, and everything was going fine. I got through Wellesley halfway. I'm ahead of pace, and I get all the way to mile 25, and I saw a clock that said I was in 10th place, and my projected finish time would be 2:44. And all I have to do is run a sub 250 to qualify, right? Got this. Mile 25, I got this. I'm so sure. This is great. And within 100 yards, I am losing consciousness. I am getting tunnel vision. I am fighting standing upright because my face wants to go first into the sidewalk. And I thought, what is happening to me? This can't be happening to me. And I was just baffled. And then I got angry. It's kind of like going through the grieving process, right? You go through all these stages. It's like, no, denial. And then it's like, angry. And then I'm like bargaining with God to help me finish. It's like, I'll do anything, but it was a horrible feeling. But then I started to think, there is no way that this can happen. I've spent a lot of years working, like many other women, towards getting to go to the Olympic trials, and I'm not giving up. I'm just not giving up. And I finally told myself I deserve this. I deserve to finish, which became my mantra in my head. I deserve to finish. So when I woke up on a hospital cot with an IV bottle hanging over my head, and I'm wrapped in a wool blanket because they've stripped my wet clothes off, and my watch is still running. That was the next memory. And the doctor's looking down at me, and there's a nurse, and we're keeping you here for observation. Your body temperature is below 93, and yada, yada, yada. And I just looked at him and said, did I finish? And what was my time? And so he told the nurse to go find out, because my watch was still running. I didn't even have the wherewithal to hit it, but I didn't even know if I finished. It turns out, I'm going to add a little bit, maybe you don't know, but Bruce Palmer of Nike is the one who picked me up before my face hit the sidewalk on the other side of the finish line. And we had a little reunion in Eugene this summer at the World Championships, and he confirmed it was him. And we took a picture anyway. But the nurse came back and she informed me that I had run 2:47 and change. Hey! It was a high 2:47, so let's round up to 2:48, right? And I was 14th place. And that means I lost 4 minutes and 4 places in 1 mile. I must have looked like a robot. I must have looked like, I don't know, it was survival.
But you did it.
But I finished. And I went to Olympia. I didn't do so. That was only 3 weeks later, so I didn't have a stellar performance there, but I finished and got my name on that finish list.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
All right, I want to leave a little time for questions. We have plenty more we can talk about, but I want to interject here in case anyone has any questions. I think the question was, are both of you still running today?
Yeah, the question for everybody was, am I running today? I've got bursitis in my right hip. The doctor said stop jogging because I was really a jogger anymore. And I do work out, exercycle and a rowing machine, which is very difficult for me. It gets my heart rate up. But I stopped even jogging on a treadmill about 5 years ago.
True confession, I have 2 brand new knees in the last 2 years. And the doctor said if I don't run, they'll last 20. If I do run, he'll see me in 5 to 10.
Yeah.
So I'm running in the pool only. And I ride an elliptical bike, and I walk. I can walk. I'm just happy to walk without pain. It's been many years since I could walk without pain. So I'm not greedy. I don't have to run.
John, you ran the marathon. You told me you ran the marathon in Seoul, Korea. How did you do it? Who were the top finishers in that race?
Oh, Carl, my last race was in September or October of 1984. I was just short of my 35th birthday. And it was kind of a predecessor to the Seoul Olympics. They were building up, even though it was 4 years before the Olympic Games in Seoul. I think Eric Stahl was in that race. I think a couple of Koreans beat me. I did not have a particularly great day, but I believe I ran 2:16. Since you got me going, I will boast that in my last year competition, I ran my second and third fastest marathons. Not fast to today's standards, but back then they were pretty dang good. Excuse me. So, thank you.
Bring a microphone around for you.
Spectators and volunteers in the year that you won. Spectators, so I can get what? Volunteers on the race and spectators.
Hard to hear here.
Spectators and volunteers. What were they like on your race day?
We ran?
Yeah, back in
Well,
73.
yeah, the question is, what was the spectating and volunteers like back then? I really have no idea how Jock and Will put it all together, but they obviously had the towns from Hopkinton on in involved, and on a sunny, warm day, and it was 77 degrees at our start, there were plenty of people along the way by my recollection for sure. I can remember Wellesley, for example. I mean, it's become famous running through the Wellesley area. And again, the spectators were enhanced by the end of the Red Sox game that day. Again, we started at noon back then. That was a tradition for many, many years.
Yeah, it actually was arranged that the timing was that the Red Sox game would let out just as the lead runners were coming through Kenmore Square.
It definitely worked that year, and
so
it was great.
It just flood into Kenmore Square.
One thing that everybody I show my winning picture to, they remark that there were no ropes, barriers, tape, nothing. There were like maybe policemen every couple hundred yards, but they were saying, wow, like the spectators could shake your hand. I mean, they were right there. That's different.
One of the amazing things now is to look at the finish line and the bridge over the Boylston and so forth. My recollection of running to the finish line was there was a bank of, somehow they put kind of a bank of photographers no more than 10 yards past the finish line. And so I crossed the finish line and turned right back around and ran back on Boylston for a while, so I was by myself, waving to the crowd and having fun, of course. It was a lot different than what I see now.
Hello. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and thank you to your participation in the U.S. Team Olympics team, for you too, sir, Mr. Anderson, as well as for all your achievements too, Ms. Hansen. One question is, have your children or any other family members pursued your achievements and goals with marathon running or any other kind of athleticism? Thank you.
Well, I'll relate to being an old dad, and I've got a 27-year-old son now who has some gift. He ended up playing lacrosse in high school and was very good as a midfielder. Faster than I ever dreamed of being, by the way, in terms of running 100 or 200 yards or meters. But he didn't take to running long distance. He ran cross country for 2 years, and that was it. But as a midfielder in lacrosse, the coaches said, we can't get him tired. So he was gifted with some genetic ability. And he's athletic now. At 27, he's doing a lot of biking. So thank you for the question.
Kind of similar. My son was sick of running, because both his mom and dad, it was our whole life. But he always stayed fit. He played soccer all the way through high school and beyond. But He liked that best, and I was happy because it's like secret interval training. You know, it's a lot of running, but he never caught the running bug. No, that's mom's thing.
My question is for Jackie and for both of you. It's about work ethic. So you said that you were lucky that your coach asked you to work out for 3 hours, and you were lucky that you ran in the hills of the desert. But there's a lot of people that could have done those things and won Boston and didn't, but you didn't. So I was just wondering if you could say more about your work ethic and what drove you at that time.
While I was training, yeah, I know my day revolved around running every day. And I coach that way too. I say to my athletes, like, everything you do every day, does it contribute or take away from your workout? Make your choices and make smart choices. But at that time, I won Boston. I was a junior, more or less, in college. I took a little longer than I should have to finish college. But I was going to college, and I paid my own way through college. Had my own apartment, so I had my own job. I had a job. So the hardest thing about training for Boston, I gotta say, I know we don't have harsh winters. I got t-shirt weather all year round, but 11 out of 13 workouts were in the dark, not that I was counting. But Monday through Friday, I had to run before sunup or after sundown, before work or after school. And only on the weekends could I get out in the sun. And that was so hard. So most of my other marathons were all fall marathons, where I had long summer days, because I was working. I gave up television. Everybody jokes about me because I gave up television in college and I don't own a TV today. It's not so unusual today. The only thing worth watching you can see live streamed. So it was hot. Yeah, it was rough. But you learn discipline. You do, and you learn to prioritize and make good decisions. Because if your training isn't consistent, that is the only key to success, is consistent training. So I had my morning workout, I had my job, I had my classes, I had my evening workout. And round the clock we go. Eat and sleep and start over.
But was it fun? Were you having fun doing that?
I was, I don't have any regrets. But then again, my coach would be in that category of disciplinarians. So I really didn't have a choice.
I was just going to add that the term, probably most of you heard it, positive addiction.
Yeah.
And that was definitely an aspect of me continuing to do what I did.
Some people would call it compulsive.
No one here though.
My coach called me stubborn, and I said I prefer determined.
Could I ask you how you've attached with that great Hungarian coach Laszlo Tabori, who came over from Hungary after the revolution?
What would you like to know about his training?
Yeah. In other words, I didn't realize he was coaching California. I knew his running background.
Right.
He was an amazing coach. Just give a little background on coach.
My coach Laszlo Tabori, world record holder, sub 4 minute miler, Olympian, in the 50s, they barely got out of town during the Hungarian Revolution of '55 and went to Melbourne Olympics and never went home. And there's some wonderful stories that have been printed. Runner's World has like one of the best stories of that era that I've ever read, if you can look it up. But how the Hungarians brought the golden days to running here in America. So he came first to Sports Illustrated sponsored any of the Hungarian athletes who defected and brought them to California, starting up in Northern California. And then, for whatever reason, he gravitated down towards LA. His coach was Mihaly Igloy, who is the grandfather of interval training, period. And so a lot of American milers were coming west to have the opportunity to train under Igloy. And so I never actually met him. My husband ran for him, but I never met him. And I inherited that club kind of went from Igloy's club, LA Track Club, to Joe Douglas went to Santa Monica Track Club, and my coach went and started San Fernando Valley Track Club. So we had two branches in LA of that training system going on. And I got the Hungarian version. Absolutely.
Seems to have worked out pretty well. All right, we have about 2 minutes left. Are there any other questions?
Can I just say a few thank yous?
Question in the back,
Question?
and then yes.
Thank you again for this opportunity. My name is Jacqueline. I'm a medical assistant, and Boston has done so much during COVID, has survived the COVID pandemic. During the 50th anniversary of the Boston Marathon, and as well as to the 10th anniversary of course, the bombing, what can you as champions give to the city and to the athletic community to let us know how to persevere during tough times? Thank you.
How to person.
In about 30 seconds each. So that's a tough ask.
No magic, just have a plan and stick with it. Have a plan ahead of time and hold to that plan and have a positive approach to it, but adapt as the world changes as you go forward. Somehow that fits, I hope, your question. My training was Bill Bauerman based. She mentioned her coaches, and that's how he coached. You had a plan, but you had to adapt as things changed that you had no control over. And so continual adaptation to a plan.
I think that answers the question very well, Jackie.
Very well. The marathon is that one event. You can do all your homework and you're not guaranteed to pass the test through no fault of your own. So adaptation, yeah, you got to, come in 100% and totally positive. Don't psych yourself out. But if things change, you have to be ready to go with the flow. You have to be ready, have a plan B, and persevere.
I'm afraid that we have to end our session now to make room for the next, but we can all adjourn right over toward that table over there, ask any further questions, and continue our discussion over there. And I thank you all so much for coming, and happy anniversary.
Thank you all.